Hello, Hockey World. Today is Tuesday, December 27th, 2016.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Before we get to the world of hockey, we have some World Juniors to talk about. ACT posted a couple rumors. We'll take a look at those. We'll take a look at the standings at the holiday break, and there's some games going tonight. We have to talk about, and this year, 2016, has really sucked, I have to say, and not because of the political situation, which we have to live with, but just the plethora. I think I saw a list of it was like 23 notable musicians have died in 2016. But now, like, even more celebrities over the break. George Michael. I mean, I wasn't a particular fan of his music. But,
Hey, look, I mean, I'll tell you this.
Guy.
Very great voice. If you have never heard him do the duet with Elton John for Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me, it's fabulous.
Yeah, and
did that at Live Aid. It was fabulous.
Yeah, and when he did when they did the tribute to Freddie Mercury after he passed away, I think he did "Somebody to Love," which is a pretty tough song to pull off, and he had a great enough voice that he could do it. I mean, like he was more of a pop star, and he had a few catchy songs, but he was
a lot to charity too.
Yeah, a big star, and 53 years old, he dies of heart failure. But just before the show, the Grim Reaper Cohen strikes again, and it's sad.
I take no joy. I don't.
No. And the funny thing was, I mentioned this to you and Eck. Text each other back and forth that I saw Rogue One yesterday, and anybody who's seen it. At the end of that movie, it's sort of a prequel to the first Star Wars movie. They have a CGI picture of a young Carrie Fisher as Princess Leia, which I was like right up against the screen. You could see it was CGI. It was like, I'm surprised they didn't do something more than that, but it was pretty good. But she was there in that, and then just a few minutes ago, it came over the wire that Carrie Fisher has passed away at the age of 60. She had a heart attack on a plane from London to Los Angeles. They revived her. She was in the hospital, but she had another heart attack and just didn't. I mean, 60 years old. I know she had a history of, drug abuse and things of that nature. That puts a lot of burden on your heart, but
it's just
60 years old, Russ. Geez.
It's rough, and I feel bad for Debbie Reynolds, right? You don't ever want to outlive your kids.
Yeah.
He tweeted the other day, actually, to say that Carrie Fisher was stable, and it made me think, wow, Debbie Reynolds, I remember watching her when I was a kid, and my mother probably watched her when she was a teenager. Well, not a teenager, as an adult. But I think she's 89, Debbie Reynolds. And so it's a tough day. It really is a tough day. I also don't want to think that people will only know Carrie Fisher just for Star Wars, because she was pretty talented. She really was. I remember she's had parts on a lot of stuff. She was good in The Burbs. Remember that movie?
Yeah.
But she had parts in other things that she was really good at. She's always going to be remembered for Star Wars, but I just always appreciated the fact that she was always like honest about things, even to the point where Harrison Ford's wasn't thrilled with her a week ago. But that was the way she was, and I appreciated that about her.
Yeah, she wrote a book that was turned into a movie called Postcards from the Edge,
right.
Where she was portrayed by Meryl Streep, and Debbie Reynolds was portrayed by Shirley MacLaine. And the movie was directed by Mike Nichols. It was,
that was a great movie.
It was a pretty damn good movie. And but yeah, I mean, she had a history, and she finally. I mean, it was a few years ago on HBO. There was like sort of like the type of one man or one woman show that Mike Tyson did, sort of going over her life and talking about her marriage to Paul Simon and Star Wars and other things. It was pretty good. It was pretty revealing about her life. But
yeah, she was always revealing. Like she wasn't like one of these Hollywood people that acted like a Hollywood person. She acted like a normal person. She wasn't like everyday normal. But that's the way she sort of came off, and I always appreciated that about her.
Yeah, I'm not trying to make fun of these people, but I joked a couple days ago that because it looked like she had the heart attack, and looked like they caught her, and she was recovering, and she would be fine, and obviously sadly this has happened. But I said, if she had passed away, there would be like mass suicides of Star Wars fans, and sadly, I mean, we know that
they'll just be tributes. That's what they'll be.
Yeah,
there'll be a lot of tributes. Hey, look, I'm a Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
I have Star Wars memorabilia around my house. I think if you grew up in that era, you couldn't help but be affected by it.
Mm-hmm.
She had an impact.
Yeah, and I mean, I know that. I mean, I don't know what the plans are for the movie after not the Rogue One, but the one previous, the one with Harrison Ford and her in it. We know Harrison Ford. Sorry, spoiler here. Harrison Ford dies in the movie. But if you haven't seen it, it's too bad. But she lived. Her character, Princess Leia, lived. So I'm assuming now that there was not going to be any part of her. I mean, if there was, they're going to have to write that out or do correction.
No, I think there is some of her in it because the primary shoot's done. We'll see. We'll see what gets added to lighten things up a little. I'm still looking for Jabba the Hutt's tweet to see if he sends in a tweet.
That's wow.
But you gotta, at some point, you have to lighten it up. She had a good sense of humor. She'd probably laugh at that.
Well, okay, if you want to lighten things up, let's talk about Rex Ryan.
Well, we all knew he was fired. That was obvious. But we didn't know that they were going to just dismiss him before the last home game, because it is a home game for the Bills. This one's at Citi Field, MetLife. Okay. Well, then that's a different story. I guess they didn't. But it's weird that they would put a guy in for one game on the road. I guess they didn't want the circus of Rex. I guess that's what the deal is.
Okay, this is the thing. I tried to think about this when I heard about the firing. What is the hockey comparative? What is the coach that everybody knows he's dead man walking, and not currently, not somebody who hasn't been fired yet, but just in the recent past, somebody who ended up getting fired that everybody and their brother knew was going to get fired. And the first one that came up was John Tortorella in Vancouver. Everybody knew he was a dead man. Yeah,
that's a good one. If you want to go back further, when I was really heavily covering the Rangers, Ron Lowe, that was an obvious one. Okay. But they didn't know how to do it because he was a good guy and he had the Edmonton connections. Muckler, even before him, was another one.
Yeah.
Brian Trottier before him was another one.
But, okay.
So sometimes.
I have a ringside seat for this train wreck, this clown car known as the Buffalo Bills. They have not made the playoffs since Home Run Throwback, since the Music City Miracle in 1999. So we're talking 17 consecutive years. They have missed the playoffs, and they have gone through a slew of quarterbacks. So now they fire Rex Ryan, but they're apparently not going to fire the general manager who's drafted and mismanaged this team over the last few years. They're not going to fire Russ Brandon, who is the co-president of the Buffalo Sabres and the Buffalo Bills. They're just going to fire Rex and his brother and most of the staff, and the guy who they've appointed as interim coach. It sounds like they are grooming him to be the head coach. He's like one of these he's a rising star apparently. Yeah. I don't know anything about him other than they replaced Greg Roman with him, and their offense had sputtered, but they had a really great game against Miami, and it was basically Rex's fault that they lost the game. But here's the thing, Russ. Tell me that this is a move guaranteed to win a game at MetLife on, I believe, Sunday. The starting quarterback will be E.J. Manuel.
I still think the Bills will win.
I don't know.
You're not giving credit enough to how bad the Jets currently are. This is going to be a game to see who's worse.
Yep. Yeah, and then what this tells me also is that Tyrod Taylor is going to be cut.
Yes.
Because if they were going to keep him, because he's got one of these contracts where if he stays next year, then there's cap ramifications like dead money. But if they cut him next year, there's nothing. So they're going to cut him. And
look, Bills and Jets fans are in the same spot, man. We hate each other, but we're in the exact same spot. The only thing that Bills and Jets fans can do is just laugh at the Browns and the Lions, because I feel bad for Kevin Allen. I do. This team had it all but wrapped up a few weeks ago, and now they have to go in. They're at home, but they have to play Aaron Rodgers, who is red hot, to make the playoffs. Now, both tie then they both get in. It's not going to be a tie. We're not going to see a tie. So
well, I was going to say Green Bay needs the game to get in, correct?
Correct.
Wow. Yeah, well.
It's not going to be good for Detroit.
I'm so glad that I don't care about the NFL. I care about hockey. I care about Major League Baseball. I could give a crap less about the NBA or MLS. I don't care about the NFL. I'll watch the Super Bowl because it's an excuse to get together with my friends and eat some chicken wings and pizza.
All right, let's talk hockey then.
Let's go. Okay, sorry. Okay, the opening day of the World Juniors yesterday. We'll talk about the two big matchups. Well, I mean, U.S. versus Latvia is not a big matchup, but I mean, it's big because it's the U.S., so we have to talk about that. But let's start with Canada-Russia first, because I was impressed with a few players on the Russian team, namely Samsonov.
It's Samsonov now. They've changed it again.
Yeah,
I mean, players, I hope the players understand. We go along with these changes. We respect these changes, but we eventually slip back.
Well, is it Sergachev or Sergachev?
I always thought it was Luke Kunin too. Now it's Kunin. So everybody gets their change.
Yeah,
but at some point we slip back. I'm just letting the players know it's nothing personal.
Yeah. Well, okay. So Team Canada wins. Samsonov, I didn't see the shots on goal, but it had to be like 40-15 or something.
Yeah, he gave up 3 power play goals, so really he only gave up 2 even strength goals. He was fantastic.
Yeah.
In that last minute and a half, the play that he came out to cut down the angle.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was on Blake Spears. I don't remember who it was on. It was unbelievable. The guts on that showed the absolute athleticism, and then he got back into the corner, and they couldn't even put it in the corner. Just shows you how good he is. It was a bad game plan for Russia. That's what it was.
Well, the funny thing is, it's like the goal that was the most impressive for Canada. I mean, if it wasn't Barzil's, it was Dylan Strome's one-timer on the power play.
Yeah.
And Samsonov was there. He was there. He had the glove there. He had the pad there. The shot was just powerful. It got between the glove and the pad and got through. But, I mean, okay, Canada is the obvious favorite for this tournament. They're at home. But they don't have the star power that they had 2 years ago. They don't have Connor McDavid, but they have a very deep team, a very good team.
It's a really deep blue line. That's what I really like about them. Like that Jake Bean cross-ice pass was as good as any pass you see in the NHL currently today. And so, like, that was tremendous. And so I love their blue line. Shabbat could have had a little better of a game, to be honest, but for the most part, we're nitpicking. The thing that I don't get, now some people say, well, this is the plan, but you never know what Team Canada is going to do with their goaltending. And so now Carter Hart's out and Connor Ingram's in. I like Connor Ingram. Don't get me wrong. I think Carter Hart gave up 1 bad goal. That's what I think. And he gave up 3 in total.
Yeah, but it was on like 15 shots. That's
So what?
And the thing,
every Canadian game is going to be on 15 shots.
Sure, and the thing is, honestly, I think this is probably planned even beforehand. I'll bet you anything because they're playing.
I don't know about that, but
Well, I mean, it's Slovakia and it's back to back. So you don't think that they're going to play back to, like, after Hart plays against Russia, which is obviously the tougher of the two. You would think that they would go to their number 2 goalie in the second of back to backs against a lesser opponent. So I think that this was planned, and I think when they come up against, I'm not sure if the next game after that is against, because they played.
But again, this goes back to the whole like Lundqvist-Ronta thing. If Ingram goes in there and gives up 1 goal, Ingram's going to play the next game. You can't tell me that was the plan too. That's where the plan goes astray. That's why I don't totally buy it.
I don't know. I mean, I think that because I'm not 100% sure, but I think the next game would then be the U.S. game on New Year's Eve, and I would be shocked.
But still, all right, so Connor Ingram pitches a shutout. You're going to Connor Ingram next game.
Well, it's not single elimination right now. So
but they're going to. They will.
Right. And I think Hart's statistics in the Western Hockey League are obscene. So it's
I don't think it was on him. I think Russia is way better than the game they showed. I think their undisciplined play killed them. The Zabriskie, he's a Ranger draft pick. That penalty killed them. It was a horrible time for it. That hooking penalty, right? Mm-hmm. It was just bad, right? It just that game snowballed, but they did show an ability to come back a couple of times. Yeah. And there's still a worry in this tournament. Trust me.
Oh, you know, and I'll butcher the name, so I apologize. Gurionov, the Dallas.
Yeah, Gurionov's right.
That's the hit that he had on Noah Juleson.
Yeah.
Which you know, I mean, I think the Russians were trying to assert their. You know, usually the Canadians run the Russians out of the rink. I think the Russians were standing up to them and trying to
Yes.
sort of be preemptive, and you know, to a point, I guess that worked. But you know, you get yourself in penalty trouble, and Team Canada's power play was just overwhelming. So
yeah,
you know,
that's going to be the game plan. They showed everybody, hey, don't put Team Canada on the power play, because if you take away the power play, that game was pretty close. Now you can't do that. But I'm just saying, if you keep them out of the box, if you're a superpower team like Sweden or Russia again or the U.S., that's a way to sort of neutralize them. It's the only way.
And I'll just touch on Sweden because we didn't. I watched a little bit of the game.
Yeah, I have it on DVR. I haven't seen it yet.
But they won 6-1 over Denmark, and Alex Nylander, who was wonderful in the tournament in Helsinki last year. He had 2 goals. Carl Grundstrom, who is a Maple Leaf draft pick, who was second in the SHL in goals for a 19-year-old, that's pretty good. He had a goal and an assist. And the Wunderkind. Now I have not seen a lot of him, so I'm going to be watching him during the rest of this tournament. Rasmus Dahlin, he's a 16-year-old defenseman who made it apparently over Liljegren.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was some injury problems with Liljegren, but you know, Dahlin made it, and he had a goal and an assist in his first World Junior game, which is impressive. I mean, this is a kid.
Yeah, no question. I mean, he could be the #1 pick in 2018. We'll see. There's a lot of time between now and then. I still don't think Liljegren not being here hurts his draft stock very much. I just think because we know that he's injured, and we know that that's taken probably it's a good reason, a big reason why he's not on this team. Mm-hmm. He's going to play again, and I think he's going to still be pretty high in the rankings. You know, I've been asked already twice about Nolan Patrick, and I can't tell you he's the lock for #1 anymore, because the one thing scouts want to see is they always want to sort of be reminded or, you know, let me see what he looks like lately so it reaffirms that I think he's the top pick. And so I do think that everybody's going to need to see him a few more times to make sure that he's still the top pick. Right. But I will say I think it's in flux right now. I know that heard Jeff Merrick, who we both know, mentioned that he didn't think that even if Patrick missed the rest of the year that he would not be the #1 pick. But you know that things can change, and from what I remember, he's supposed to be back in January, and he'll go through the rest of the WHL season and then the WHL playoffs. Things can change also from team needs perspective too. I mean, again, I told you, if I really need a defenseman, as good as I think Nolan Patrick is, and he's a big centerman and everything else, I still might take Liljegren because I need to build my blue line. That doesn't, so that's why I can't say he's a lock.
Well, okay, say it this way: if you are Buffalo, Toronto, maybe 3 or 4 other New Jersey, 3 or 4 other teams that are probably not making the playoffs, and you get the #1 pick, I think you're taking Liljegren. If you're a team like Carolina who's loaded on defense, you're taking Nolan Patrick. It's going to be
or Nico Hischier, who we need to see more of in this tournament too, who is going to be a top 5 pick. I mean, he plays for the Swiss. That's another kid who could somehow be #1 if he were to light up this tournament. If the Swiss were to go really far, well, he plays in the World Championships too.
Now
things can happen.
Now, Team USA played Latvia. It was, I believe, a 6-1 victory. It was close about halfway through the game, and then the U.S. pulled away. Now, this is the thing. It's like I thought that the U.S. struggled for a little bit, and then I think they found their footing. I like Tyler Parsons in goal, but he only faced like 14 or 15 shots. So it wasn't like he was standing on his head. I thought he played decently, but that game wasn't resting on his shoulders. That I think when that game was close, it was only close because the U.S. couldn't beat the Latvian goaltender, which had the greatest name, Mittens. For a goaltender having a last name of Mittens is perfect.
Yeah, I tweeted that out last April, I think. I mean, he is a good goalie. It's just the team broke down. The few things that Latvia did really well is they're big, and that gave the blue line a problem for the U.S.
Yep.
The U.S.'s blue line is a problem. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the bigness, the size, the shiftiness of some of their skaters, and the decent goaltending for half that game gave the U.S. a real problem. I will say that the U.S. blue line is a big problem, and it's a big problem because Caleb Jones is not Seth Jones. That's one thing. Jack Ashan was okay. He wasn't as great as we're all hearing he is, and I saw him get walloped pretty good once in that game. Now, Ashan did also block a shot and lay a hit. That's all well and good. I didn't see him get on the score sheet, and so we'll see what Ashan can do down the line. But again, he's 5'7". I kind of wonder what's going to happen when they play Team Canada and how he'll do. Patrick Harper had a nice goal. Really, really nice goal, but he had a load of space. Is he going to get that much space against Canada? I don't think so. I think Latvia didn't know what to do.
I mean, the one thing Latvia did do, like you were saying, was try to be physical. I mean, guy, and I'm sort of concentrating on Leaf players, but I'm watching the game as well. And Martin Durkals, who's one of the third-round pick in 2015, he's not a big guy, and he was throwing his weight around because I think that was the whole plan. Jeremy Bracco for Team USA got whacked along the boards right near the bench,
He did.
And but so I mean,
but he was still one of their best skaters. Had a nice power play goal.
Yeah.
But they took him off their game. For half that game, they looked disorganized on the power play. They did not do what we heard that they were going to do on the penalty kill, and that was pursue. They did anything but pursue. They basically collapsed in that lower box and let Latvia move the puck around as much as they wanted to. Had they had somebody who, like a Dylan Strome or somebody who had a great one-timer, the U.S. would have been in trouble. I mean, Tyler Parsons had a good game. He didn't play great. He didn't have to play great. He made like 2 great saves.
Yeah, he made that one post-to-post save where he did the gymnastic splits.
Yes,
and it was impressive. But that save does not mean he had a great game.
No, but there were a lot of hiccups in that game. The 6-1 score was not a real indication of how the U.S. played. I thought the U.S. played poorly. I do, and I think if they had played Russia or Canada or Sweden in that first game, they'd have been in trouble.
Right. So, I mean, there's a bunch of games.
A lot of time left.
Yeah, I mean, we're just getting started here. A bunch of games. As I said, New Year's Eve is the one I'm looking forward to. Canada US in Toronto. That'll be a war. And there's.
I've gone to great lengths to watch that game. Great lengths.
Yeah.
Always, every year.
Yep. It's all, and that'll be a good sporting night because you're going to have.
Yes.
You're going to have that game, and if people are into college football, you're going to have the college football playoffs. I mean, there's a number of things to be watching on New Year's Eve and not get drunk. Okay, let's take a look at the NHL the standings right now as we emerge from the break. Now, I think the trade freeze drops today. It would make sense.
Yes.
Games are being played today. Ack talked about a couple potential trade rumors. We'll finish that out at the end of the show. But just looking at the divisions right now. The Atlantic Division, we have Montreal at 46 points with a 21-9-4 record. Ottawa at 43 points. Boston at 40. And just to, Boston is the lowest of the top 3 teams in the East with 40 points. And the wild card race, you have Carolina, Tampa, and Florida at 37, 37, and 36 points. So let's talk about the Atlantic first. I mean, Montreal has... they're benefiting from the great year from Carey Price. Shea Weber is I believe still out with the foot injury. They've lost Galchenyuk. They've lost Desharnais to injuries. Right now, Russ, I think all the weight's on Carey Price until they get healthy again.
Yeah.
And I think that Bergevin is probably going to have to get busy and make some moves and make some additions before March the 1st.
He will, but last year he didn't make a ton. I don't think he's going to make a ton this year. I think they're a team that's going to be very prudent and going to sort of wait a little while and see who shakes loose. But they don't seem to be a team that wants to add much to the cap. And so we'll see about that. That's going to be the biggest struggle, I think.
Well, I think it's going to be rentals. I think it's going to be, it's not going to be guys they're going to have to worry about long term because, they have the Weber contract. They have to worry about signing Price. I think Price is up after next year. I think he's got one more year. It's either one or two.
Yeah.
So they have to worry about extending Price, and Price is basically their team. And, from every indication, Galchenyuk and Desharnais will be back before the end of January. So it's not like they're going to be out for the rest of the season. But, that team always has to worry about goal scoring. And if those guys don't come back at 100%, then that may be a concern. Ottawa, to me, Russ, is the biggest surprise. I picked them for dead last. They're getting great goaltending. When it's not Craig Anderson,
there's still a half season left, but so far so good.
Yeah, when he's away from the team, and it's understandable that he's away from the team with what's going on with his wife.
Yeah,
getting good goaltending out of Hammond for a while. Then he got hurt. Now Condon has stepped in. So 20-11-3. They got a lot of room under the cap if they want to make additions before the deadline.
They're not going to make big additions.
They're not going to make additions because their owner is on a budget. So
that's going to be a tough one. Tonight's going to be very fortuitous for them because Henrik Lundqvist has the flu. The Rangers just called up Brandon Halverson. Antti Raanta was in net as far as in practice, the starter's net. So expect Raanta in there. No Lundqvist. Tough way for the Rangers to start out after the break because they didn't exactly go into the break looking good. And so now they're going to have to dig themselves out of it.
Well, didn't Lundqvist get pulled in the last game? Yeah. So it's that's a drama in and of itself. Now, Metropolitan Division, you got the hottest team in the NHL, the Columbus Blue Jackets, winners of a dozen in a row. At 50 points, leading the league with 50 points. Pittsburgh at 49 points, 22-8-5. The Rangers at 23-12-1 with 47 points. Then you got the two wild card teams, Washington and Philadelphia at 44 points. So if you look at the East right now, the gap between the wild cards, the two wild card teams, and the teams chasing them is 7 points. That's tough. Nothing's impossible, but that's tough to make up with the 3-point games. And let's talk about
early enough that you can though.
Yeah, so if a team goes into a slump, if a team loses a key player, it's possible.
Look, the Rangers could easily drop 7 points. If Lundqvist stays out 2-3 games with the flu, it's unlikely, but let's say he does. Nash is still out. Pavel Buchnevich, we don't even hear updates on. He was supposed to be back at least a week ago. Now we're going into 2 weeks over what it said. That doesn't look good. Things could change for the New York Rangers in a New York minute. I don't want to be, there's no other way to say that, but that's where things like this are possible still, In a
New York minute. Thanks, Don Henley.
Yeah.
Okay, but nobody picked Columbus to win this division.
No.
I thought that they might have an outside chance at getting a wild.
We all did talk about the possibility of them making the playoffs. We did. Yeah. I don't remember if I put them in or out, but I do remember talking about the possibility.
Yeah, but I thought a wild card. I didn't think. And granted, they're only 1 point ahead of Pittsburgh and 3 points ahead of the Rangers, so a 2-game losing streak, and they're in third place. But still, I think that there's a possibility in tying everything to what may happen at the deadline. I think there's a possibility that team could add because. If you have
they could add, definitely.
Yeah, if you have a group and you're not going to mess with the group, and you have cap room, which they do, you can add players to that mix. And
Jarmo Kekalainen's in a really great spot because he has assets to trade, he has cap room to work with, and so he could even trade a young asset for somebody that they really need and take on a contract.
Yeah. And Pittsburgh, the one situation that seems to just be hanging around is the Marc-Andre Fleury situation. If you look at his statistics,
I'm telling you, I think now there's a 30 to 40% chance that Murray gets traded. Because we look at this situation, again, look at the Rangers, right? They can't do anything with Stahl and Girardi. They have to protect them.
Yeah. If
Marc-Andre Fleury decides he wants to play in Pittsburgh, tell me what the Penguins can do.
They can't. There's nothing they can do. Yeah, if he's adamant about finishing out his contract there, then he's staying.
Right.
And, but the thing is,
we're all expecting him to say, "Yeah, don't worry, I'll go somewhere else. We don't know that.
How much, I mean, with a gun at their head, how much could Pittsburgh get for Matt Murray before the expansion draft?
They could get like a couple of number ones and a team's top prospect and a roster player.
You think it would be that much?
I do.
Even with them facing the possibility, you're counterweighting.
Doesn't matter. He's a Stanley Cup winning goaltender. If you're a team that like Calgary, you're desperately in need of a goaltender, you might make that trade because Calgary's pretty good, but they need a goalie.
Well, what about a team like Buffalo who traded a first-round pick for Robin Lehner, which has been, I think, now going on its second year has been. I mean, Lehner's statistics are not terrible, but they're not winning with him. And there is
Buffalo would be a prime target too. Buffalo would be
Dallas, Calgary,
Calgary,
St. Louis.
St. Louis, I don't think. Well, but they might. St. Louis might. I mean, there's probably 5 or 6 or 7 teams that would be in on this, and I think the price could get that high. I think the minimum would be a first-round pick, a number 1 prospect in their organization, and a roster play. That's minimum.
Okay, based on the way the division is breaking down, you can't say that Tampa or Florida are out of range to catch Boston. They're only 3 or 4 points behind the Bruins. The Leafs are 5 points. But if you look right now, I mean,
so 5 points. So you think the Leafs are going to make the playoffs then?
Not a chance. I think.
But they still talk about it on Toronto.
I know, and I understand the reason why. And Mike Babcock talks about it as well. But it's a pipe dream. It's a fantasy. It's what they want to do is they want to sell hope, and they want to have the mindset of being competitive as long as possible into the season, because when they finally drop out and it's not within reason, then all they're going to be talking about is, will they trade JVR? Will they trade this guy? Will they trade that guy? And they want to avoid that as much as possible.
Now, I will tell you this. There was a lot, and I mean a lot, of insight into Mike Babcock with the Epic series. A lot more than I thought they would have had. Mm-hmm. And I reviewed the first two shows up on Sportsology, and I was surprised. Now, if I were going to quiz you, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but what did he say his team's number 1 asset is? And it's not a player; it's a characteristic.
Their determination, their heart,
their speed.
Okay, I mean they do, yeah.
And I thought that was telling. I was like, okay, so we know now, because Mike Babcock doesn't come out and talk about this generally. But he did talk about it, whether I think it was either on the bench or in this one-on-one interview or maybe even pregame. Whenever he mentioned it, we would never normally hear it, right? So I felt like that was some good insight, especially if you're a Leafs fan, as to what Babcock is sort of going for the future. Now, I also thought it was some interesting insight that you go into Babcock's office and he's the opposite of yours. There's nothing on the wall except for a 67 Leafs picture and basically one of those things that you get at like Josh Rimmer's places. Maybe
are you saying this is cluttered? Come on.
I'm just saying.
There's nothing here. Nothing to see here. Come on.
You go to the Toronto Expo, you could pick up what Mike Babcock had on the wall, and it was a nice memorabilia piece for the 67 Leafs, and that was really it, and pictures of his family.
It's probably on loan from the Center Sports or the Leafs Pro Shop. He probably has can I borrow this?
AJ Sports. I was thinking AJ Sports. That was the name that didn't come.
Can I borrow this for 7 years, 8 years?
But the idea was it's a telling little insight into the mind of Mike Babcock, because he's one of those. He is like an NFL coach.
Yeah.
He is looking at video from the minute he gets there to the minute he leaves, unless a player walks in and probably wants to talk to him, or he's out there on the ice. Like, that is what he's doing. He is all business.
And he's a creature of routine too, because one of the things I found out, he will go out on the ice for the morning skate. He'll run the drills. He'll talk to the players. He'll gather them at center ice, and then apparently he either runs or goes on a treadmill for like 10 or 15 minutes in between that and then talking to the media, because the media will will go into the locker room and talk to some players for 10 or 15 minutes. And when we go back into the media room and he comes in and he's soaked. He's basically, he comes out sometimes with a towel around and sometimes he's drinking his water, but he does that every single time. That's his routine. And, and he's a very structured guy. And I think that in the end is going to benefit the Leafs, but there's a lot of work to go. So it's as much as Mike Babcock is talking about that team being a playoff contender, they won back-to-back for the first time all year before the break. They beat Colorado and Arizona, two of the worst teams in the league. They come back from the break now. They play Florida and Tampa, who need to win. So I would be very shocked if the Leafs win. At best, I think they split those games. And then
I think if you're a Leafs fan, you should watch the Epic Series. They also did cover slightly. They didn't have enough of it, but they did have the Carolina debacle because Detroit was there and the cameras were rolling. And so they did have to address that.
Oh.
And it was interesting because you got a couple of quick locker room comments from Detroit, none from Carolina because they really just cover the teams that are playing in the outdoor games. But you could see the disappointment on the Red Wings players' faces, them just being creatures of habit, just moving their legs around, walking around, trying to stay loose. Even when they were said, hey, what if a game starts at 9? They're like, fine, better than no game. Like they wanted to play no matter what. And when the game was called, it was awful. It was really an awful moment.
And that game has been rescheduled for, I think, late March. So it's, Ken
Holland literally, he came from some meeting that we weren't privy to, right, as viewers, and he takes a deep breath, like, goes into the locker room and he goes, okay, boys, we're boarding the plane. Like, that's it. And everybody knows, we're not playing. And it was tough. Ken Holland did not want to make that call. Yeah. When he talked about it earlier and he was sort of, talking about it, he goes, I'm not a Freon guy. Like, it was funny, right? But it was just such a bad situation. And the Red Wings just felt horrible. And now that game is in late March, right? It's like, come on.
Yeah, when the game is probably meaningless because I don't think Detroit's going to be contending for the.
But you never know, right?
You never know. And they're only a few points. They're only 6 points behind Boston. So stranger things have happened.
And Henrik Zetterberg had a profanity-laced tirade, more than I thought he was capable of.
But Jimmy Howard is out for 4 to 6 weeks, so it's going to be tough with Mrazek, and I think I cannot remember the name of their backup goaltender, but Corio, I think it is.
Okay.
So they're going to have to use him a little bit. Okay, shifting to the West here. In the Central, the Blackhawks are at 49 points, 22-9-5. Minnesota in second at 21-8-4, 46 points. St. Louis at 41 points, 18-12-5. Now, Russ, the thing is, Chicago, Minnesota, both having good years. Dubnyk leading the way in Minnesota. Chicago has to be given credit because they've been doing this without Crawford, without Taves for a good chunk. Neither one of those teams has a lot of room for maneuverability at the deadline. So they're going to, Stan Bowman is going to, and Chuck Fletcher are going to have to get creative if they want to add.
Well, that's true. But the one thing the Chicago Blackhawks are, they're still prospect rich.
Yes. And
when you're prospect rich, you can make moves. You can get teams to eat money. You can get trades perpetuated. And so I think it's a good thing for them. But I'm just looking at numbers, and here's a good one. And this is why teams all should model themselves after the Chicago Blackhawks. So Ryan Hartman's got 12 points in 31 games. That's about what I expect Ryan Hartman would do.
Sure.
And he's, and he gets thrown in after years of playing in Rockford, so he learns the way. There is a Chicago Blackhawks way. And you know what? Good for Ryan Hartman because this is working out for him. He's 22. So it's not like you could say, well, he spent too long in the minors. It's just right. And this is what they do. And when they bring up guys, they're ready. Mm-hmm. Tell me the last guy that they brought up that you felt like wasn't ready.
Well, okay, and it wasn't somebody that they developed. It was somebody that they acquired. Was a guy like Marco Dano. They brought him up.
But they acquired him.
They acquired him, and maybe they gave him a look. Maybe he was being scouted. But no. And the guys who aren't up yet, like McNeil, who was a first-round pick, they must think that he's either not ready or he's never going to be ready. But Mott and Hartman, and
it's a role too. Like Mark McNeil at this point is a fourth line center that's a face-off guy, and so they have to have that role open up.
Right, and Hartman sort of fits into that Andrew Shaw type of career path. He was in the minors for a while. He comes up.
He's a heavy hitter.
Rough and
has
tumble
offensive ability. Yep.
Yeah, I think he's
a character kid.
Younger, cheaper Andrew Shaw. You have him making.
But this is what they do. They replenish, man. They know how to do it.
Now, Minnesota. I mean, Dubnyk is having a fantastic year. I still think they're
right now. Today, this moment is the best goalie in hockey. Right now.
But I think they're offensively challenged, and that's the thing.
They are.
Is it? I mean, I think it's the age. You got Koivu, you got Pominville, you've got Parise, who are starting to get long in the tooth, and they're going to have to be very. I mean, if they go out and get themselves somebody at the deadline to help them out to score, it's going to have to be like Lee Stempniak was last year, a guy who is making $1 million. But it can score, or like a P.A. Parento or a Rene Bourque or somebody like that, a real cheap guy, because they can't, unless they trade one of the defensemen in the deal, they can't fit a big salary coming back.
No, they can't fit a big salary. I don't know how it's exactly going to work out for them, but they're going to have some options though, because they do have some prospects too. They just may have to be willing to move them. I mean, that's the thing, or even trade somebody who isn't doing great there, but people feel can do well somewhere else. Like, I don't know, at some point, do they trade Granlund? Because they say, you know what, he needs a change of scenery. Right. Maybe a swap like that, something like that, where they get a more veteran guy. That's something where I think they can make, because at some point, they are going to be a serious Stanley Cup contender.
Yeah, I don't think they want to move the guys like Charlie Coyle or Niederreiter, who have more of a physical presence, but a Granlund might be somebody that or Jason Zucker. We know Zucker's got durability problems. He's very talented, but he has trouble staying healthy, at least in the last few years he had.
Yeah, I mean, he's looked good when I've seen him lately, but he always looks good when he's healthy. That's the thing. I will tell you this. They have a kid playing in the World Juniors, Kirill Kaprizov.
He scored one of the goals yesterday.
Yeah, he scored one of the goals. He looks good. He's got 15 goals in the K. I don't know what his contract situation is, but their season ends early, doesn't it?
Yeah, at 19 years old, he's got 15 in the KHL, which is pretty impressive.
So I don't know if his contract is up or if there's a way to buy him out of his contract. You could get him at the end of his season.
You might be able to, but the way things are going in Russia right now, I mean, I can only use the example of some of the kids that the Leafs drafted in recent years that are KHL guys that are 19 or 20. They're usually locked up for at least a year or two. So, like, I know that Igor Korshkov, who started in the World Junior last year for Russia, he's playing in the K this year as a 20-year-old. He was doing really well, broke his leg, but he was going to stay in the KHL for one more year, and then potentially maybe would come over to North America next year. So just as a rule of thumb, I would probably think that he's under contract for another year, but you never know.
We don't know. He's in his third year, so sometimes, after that. They're not always – they're usually locked up like these guys in 2-year increments, so it could be another year. But I'm just trying to glean if I could see. You never know. I mean, all I know is if for some reason he's on the end of his contract, like that's a guy they should bring over.
Well, I believe they said during the broadcast he was the number 1 pick in the KHL draft.
Yes.
And he's moved from one organization to another. I think he's with UFA now. He was with another KHL team. So – I mean, I don't know if that means that, maybe his contract is up and that they just traded for him for a 1-year thing, or if they got him for a couple years. I don't know.
No, you know what? In 2015, they signed him to a 3-year extension.
There you go. So yeah, they like to keep these guys to at least. I mean, we've heard about the rule, the potential of the KHL limiting these players to not leaving until they're 25, which
that's too bad. I mean, I know he's making money, but. Boy, he could really help that team.
Yeah. Now, in the Pacific, you have the San Jose Sharks at 43 points, 21, 12, and 1. Starting to pull out, starting to play a lot better after a slow start. Edmonton at 18, 12, and 6, 42 points, 1 point behind. Anaheim at 17, 12, and 6, 40 points. 3 points behind the Sharks. You've got LA and Calgary at 38 points holding the 2 wild card spots. Russ, everything to me comes back to Edmonton, whether they're for real or whether they're not.
We're going to find out. We're going to start to find out.
Yeah, I mean, Darnell Nurse is probably out for, I'd say at least a couple months as a serious injury. It was not just, I guess, ligaments, but bone damage as well. So that's something. I mean, and they lost another. They lost a forward. I cannot remember who it was, but it was a young. Pitlick.
Yeah,
they lost Pitlick for the year. So they've lost a couple players, young players. I mean, everything centers around McDavid, obviously, but at a certain point, they have to take a little bit of the heat off of him and have guys like Nugent Hopkins and Eberle and Draisaitl step up and carry more of the load.
Here's the funny thing, okay? While we're sort of focused on Edmonton and what they can and can't do, the Sharks have included and they've inserted Timo Meier and Kevin Labanc. Meier's got 1 goal in 4 games, so we don't know if that's going to stick.
Right.
Labanc's got 6 goals in 21 games, 8 points. He's going to stick, or at least stick for a while longer. He's, and that's, see, again, San Jose, just when it looks like they're on their last run, they draft very well, and they've inserted some guys. I don't know who's going to give Edmonton the jump. Like these, San Jose was hurting a little bit, and they inserted 2 of the youngsters, and it's definitely helped them. What is Edmonton going to do?
Yeah, the only thing that they can do is, the place they really need to improve is on the blue line, and I don't see them getting a defenseman before the deadline that will make a big difference. Now, I mean, San Jose, the one thing because I was looking at them in terms of like what their need is. Last year, they traded for Roman Polak at the deadline to have a 6th defenseman. They signed David Schlemko in the offseason. Now, he's not a great defenseman, but he's a number 6. He's unless they have injuries there, their defense is fine. Where I think they're going to need to add is up front, because Michael Bodker has been an absolute freaking disaster of a signing. I think he has 1 goal, maybe 2, and they're paying him $4 million a year. So, I'm sure that there are going to be rental possibilities out there. They may have cap restrictions as well. I'm not looking at their cap right now, but this is the last shot here. You've got Thornton, you got Marlowe. They're at the end of their contracts. Maybe they come back, maybe they don't, but you have just so many bullets left in the gun. I think you have to take your shot when you have it.
No, I think that's fair. I think that probably is going to happen, but I don't think they're going to trade youth anymore. I think they're going to just get a rental.
Right.
But everybody needs defensemen. So, like, if we see it written in an article, well, they need an NHL defense. Well, everybody does. And so very few teams are going to be able to fill that.
Except the Anaheim Ducks. They do not need defensemen.
I will say this. Before we go to Anaheim, I want to give everybody an update on Chris Russell. So he has no goals and 5 points in 8 games and is a +2 in 29 games. Has that been a successful signing?
I mean, he's a depth defenseman making $3 million. The only good thing is it's for 1 year, Russ.
Right.
If it was a 3-year deal, you'd be banging your head against the wall. And I listed this to you, and this is, we'll just go back to the Buffalo Sabres, because I wrote something for Hockey Buzz today about some potential moves and things of that nature in Buffalo. Dmitry Kulikov, Josh Georges, and Zach Bogosian. Total salary of the 3 of them is over $13 million this year. Right now, they got 0 goals and 2 assists. That's horrific.
I could tell you that right now, the rebuild of the Buffalo Sabres has probably been increased by a couple more years. Now, a great goalie year out of Leonard or somebody else, Allmark, somebody else would help, or even a free agent or a trade or something could spark something better. But right now, for what we're seeing and what I know they have coming and everything else, it might be 2 more years till they become a playoff team, and fans are going to have to live with that.
They don't have a ton coming. I mean, that's the thing. It's like,
well, they have guys, though. They do.
They have a few.
I mean, Gooley got sent back, right? Gooley's really close.
Yeah, I think Gooley is going to be a good defenseman. I think Alex Nylander will be a good NHLer, but he's going to take time. He's not.
I don't know if he's going to take time. I think you might see him next year, whether you think so or not. I mean,
well, you might see him.
They're probably going to be on the team next year.
You might see him for a few games this year too, but
you might.
That doesn't mean that he's ready. But going back to the West, I mean, the one team in the West, and especially in the Pacific, that doesn't need defensemen is Anaheim. And I think that's going to be the key for them, because I think that they need at least one, maybe two forwards. I think they need somebody to play in their top six, and I think that the defense that they have, that's going to be a theme from now until March the 1st. They've got lots of defense, and if they want to add a forward, if they think that they have a chance and they need that extra scorer, a guy like a James Van Riemsdyk or anybody of that nature, it's going to cost them one of their defensemen. Maybe not a Vatanen or a Lindholm or a Fowler, but one of the young guys. And I think that might be a price that they're willing to pay because they have so many defensemen.
Could be. I mean, it really could be. Tough to say. But they're in a good spot because they're hovering, right? And they do have assets to trade. They're going to have to make a decision. They're going to hold on to as many of those defensemen as they can, but they are probably going to lose somebody.
Right. I mean, and that's the thing. Are they going to?
I mean, in the expansion draft.
Well, right. And then one of the things that they might do, and I think they may buy out Kevin Bieksa because he has a no-move clause on his contract.
Yeah.
And they don't want to have to be burdened by that because I think they have no move clauses on Kessler and on Getzlaf and on Perry.
Right, you can't do anything with those.
Right, so they might, and some of those young defensemen, they don't have to be protected because they're exempt. But a guy, I think Manson has to be protected. So, that's why they might move one of these guys so they can protect one of the other ones. So that's a possibility. But let's just check out the wild card here.
I do want to say this though, before you throw complete dirt on the Sabres. I like Asplund. I like Connor Hurley. I like Nick Baptiste. I know it's still going to take him a little while. Justin Bailey's I'm on the fence about. He's a good athlete. He's still going to take a while. They knew that when they drafted him. Right. But they have guys. But in the overall scheme for them, to me, they're still 2 to 3 years away from being a really serious playoff contender.
And they still need a goaltender, maybe.
Yep.
And they still need probably two or three defensemen.
Yep.
And they have a lot.
We'll say that goalie's one, so they might need 2 more.
And they have a lot of money tied up on long-term contracts like Kane, like Bogosian, like Matt Molson that they're going to have to extricate themselves from. So
then plan number 1 would be to somehow move Evander Kane, even if it costs you assets.
Well, the one good thing is that since Eichel came back, he started to score, so he might be an attractive piece because he has a short term left. I think it's 1 more year after this year, so that might be attractive to some.
I mean, Will Borgen's doing pretty good at St. Cloud, too. He is a defenseman with a little bit of offensive upside, so keep that in mind, too.
Okay, just looking at the wild card here, you got LA and Calgary at 38 points, Nashville, Dallas, and Winnipeg at 35, and then it drops to Vancouver, Arizona, forget it, Colorado, forget it.
Yeah. So if LA wins the cup, Peter Budaj gets his name on the cup?
You would hope so because he's basically been carrying them for the last 2 months. But, we think that Quick will be back by mid to late February. That's the indication.
We hope. That's without a setback or anything else possibly cropping up.
Right. And it was a leg injury. So, obviously goaltenders use their legs. So it's going to be tough. Calgary, on the other hand, I mean, they survived the Goudreau injury. They survived the fact that they didn't have a number 1 goaltender in Brian Elliott, and now their backup has become their number 1 in Chad Johnson.
Right.
To me, I think they probably need to add scoring, and they maybe need to add a goaltender because I don't think Chad Johnson can keep this up.
That's the thing. They could really change their fortunes if they were able to add a goalie because a team doesn't want to lose a goalie to the expansion draft. Right. That could really fuel a playoff run for them.
Yeah, and it's just a question of where that comes from. Do you think Marc-Andre Fleury waives his no trade to go to Calgary? Or do you think that – do you think –
push comes to shove, I'm going to say no.
Yeah, apparently they had a deal worked out with Tampa Bay for Ben Bishop, and it got nixed when they made the Brian Elliott deal because the Brian Elliott deal was a lot cheaper. So here's
a good thing for Calgary. I'm not saying they're going to trade him, right? but they only gave him a 1-game sniff so far. But Mark Jankowski's got 20 points in 23 games in the AHL. Those are Rookie of the Year kind of numbers.
Yep. Yep.
So keep that in mind. That's a big asset to have too.
Do you see any of the three, Nashville, Dallas, and Winnipeg, which one of those three is the likeliest one to challenge for a wild card spot? They all have flaws.
Nashville. Because they have Pecorine, they have the defense. We're expecting more out of Subban. We're expecting more out of their offense. They have Laviolette. I think they have enough.
Yeah, and I'm a little hesitant about Dallas, the goaltending situation, Lindy there, and Eck talked about that in his blog today. Just touched about how there's the possibility of Ryan Miller going to Dallas. But now
Vancouver's got to take one of those guys back.
Right. And that's the thing. Ryan Miller, they signed Markstrom to an extension. Miller is a UFA at the end of the year. Do they really want to lock themselves in on Anthony Niemi or on Kerry Lettinen for another year? Just to get let's just say this. I think that if Vancouver was going to have to do that in a deal for Ryan Miller, they would have to get one of those young defensemen back in the deal. The ones that we've talked about, Lindell or Hawk.
Klingberg's only got 17 points in 33 games. Like, it's okay, but it's not what you expect from John Klingberg.
Yeah, and, we may be getting to the time where Lindy Ruff is wearing –
I think the biggest change they could make is coach. I really do. I think the coach has run his course there. I do.
And the other thing that Eck touched on was Matt Duchene. Everybody seems to be Russ. Everybody seems to be talking. I know Darren Drager talked before the Christmas break. I know that Bob McKenzie mentioned it, that Colorado is probably looking at some sort of serious reset.
Why?
Well, I guess because they don't think that core group is.
Well, but the thing is, they don't have this tremendous core they could break up. They don't. And
okay, nobody is saying they're trading Nathan McKinnon. No one. That's the guy they want to build around. But the guys who've been around for longer, Duchene, Landeskog, Eric Johnson.
Okay, are they really trading Gabriel Landeskog? The answer is no.
Yeah.
Joe Sakic is not trading these guys. I'm telling you, it's not going to happen. Matt Duchene is close to a point a game. How in the world is trading him going to help you next year? Just tell me that. Forgetting about what's being said.
It's not going to help you next year, but maybe this is the realization that that they need to blow it up and rebuild.
But they're not an old team. Like, this is just a team.
No, they're not. They're not old. I'm playing devil's advocate here, but they're not old. But maybe what they're saying is that this group is not. The Toronto group was not old. They were just not winners. And that's why they had to be blown up.
Well, but this team has also had, they're going through the Patrick Waugh hangover.
Right.
They have a new coach. I think Joe Sakic is going to do very little. I'll be honest. I don't think he's going to do a lot other than see who in the organization is close to being called up. They have called up Rantanen. Let me look up his numbers again. I believe he's doing pretty well.
Yeah, he's doing okay. He's a talented kid.
I don't think there's a reason, unless you're telling me Matt Duchene's bringing back a top pairing defenseman. I don't see them trading Matt Duchene.
Right.
It doesn't cost that much.
I saw some rampant speculation about trading Matt Duchene because St. Louis is looking for a center, that trading Matt Duchene in a deal to get Shattenkirk. But the only way they do that is if Shattenkirk agrees to an extension, and he's not going to agree to an extension. So
he's not, and they don't spend that big of money in Colorado where that's going to happen. Right now Rantanen's got 15 points in 20-something games. That's good. So again, I'm looking at a core of Rantanen, McKinnon, Duchene, and Landeskog. I can't afford to trade any of those guys.
On talent alone, you're right. I wouldn't trade Duchene. I wouldn't trade Landeskog, and I wouldn't trade McKinnon. But they've already traded Ryan O'Reilly, and that deal I think has been a bust because Grigorenko has become Grigorenko, And Zadorov is young still, and he's an impressive physical package, so he might still be, a worthy defense. But I don't think he's going to be a top 4 defenseman. So if if at best he's going to be a 3-4 because he doesn't have the offensive chops. So,
but I'm saying, if they could get something for Varlamov, I mean, that may be somebody they are willing to trade. I think you could look at that. That's a possibility.
Well, I think Pickard. I'm a big Pickard fan. I think Pickard could be a number 1 in the right circumstance.
And Varlamov probably has a no trade, so they probably can't expose him to the expansion draft. I'm just guessing.
I don't know if he has a no move. That's the only thing. He may have a limited no trade, but I don't think he has a no move.
Okay.
If he does, I think the only no moves on that team are, I think it's probably McKinnon and probably Eric Johnson. So
now Eric Johnson, they probably can't afford to trade him, but maybe they would for a younger defenseman. That's possible.
Yeah, and they just signed him to an extension too.
Right. But I could see if they traded him for a younger defenseman, that's something they might be interested in, or Varlamov. Otherwise, I got to be honest, I don't think they're doing much. I think they have to they're sort of doing the right thing. It's just going a little up and down for them right now, but they do have pieces, and I don't think they could afford to trade the pieces. I do want to mention something about Winnipeg.
Yep.
Little known fact, Joel Armia. Joel Armia, who a lot of people wrote off. A lot of people were like, oh, he's a bust.
Former Sabres first-round pick. Not
a bust. He's got 4 points in 11 games, and I think if he's not leading the league in takeaways, he's like number 2 or 3. Joel Armia has found a niche in the NHL, and shame on the Sabres for sort of giving up on him and throwing him in that deal.
Well, yeah, they threw a lot of things in that deal.
They did.
Drew Stafford, Brendan Lemieux, Joel Armia. Yeah, in the end, that deal I don't think is going to be good for the Sabres. Got the bigger names, but Bogosian has not played well and has been injured, and we know what Evander Kane's on and off the ice.
But very quietly, Joel Armia is having a nice season, and forget about where he was drafted or anything about that. He's just playing productively in the NHL. That's all I care about.
Well, folks, enjoy the 10 games on the NHL schedule and the games at the World Junior. We will be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.